Good morning, guys. I just wanted to come on this morning and share something with you. I like to get up early in the morning, just because it's the only part of the day that is quiet in our house, because we've got 5 children, 4 of which still live at home. So as you can imagine, it's a busy household. But as I was downstairs this morning, I like to do a bit of reading in the morning and just a bit of thinking. It's a bit of quiet time where you can really reflect on things. And it just popped into my head. It's actually 3 years this week that I've been free from drugs, free from addiction. For those that don't know, I had 25 years struggling with substance abuse. Smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, pills, cocaine, all that sort of stuff I struggled with over a period of 25 years. And 3 years ago that ended, and it was actually 3 years ago this week, or it will be on the 5th of July. That will be 3 years that I haven't touched anything. No cigarettes, no drugs, no alcohol. I never struggled with alcohol. Alcohol was never my thing, but the drugs were most certainly an issue in my life for a long time. And I was what you would call like a functioning alcoholic, a functioning drug addict. I still worked, still functioned, still did the things I had to do. But yeah, 3 years ago that ended, and as I've said in other videos, me and my wife found out that we were both being unfaithful with each other. And I just want to say as well, because a few people have showed concern about me sharing certain things about my wife as well, she is absolutely fine with me sharing this stuff. She just doesn't want to come on camera and share it herself, which I'm sure you guys can appreciate. So we were both unfaithful. We'd both been drifting apart for a number of years, probably over a 3-year period. We'd been neglecting each other. We've got a big family, so our focus was on the kids and work, and we weren't giving each other any time, and we just both drifted apart. And we were both unfaithful. And I was struggling with a lot of stuff in my life as well, from my past traumas. Struggled with sexuality all of my life, ever since I can remember. I've had people on YouTube, not many, but one or two, saying, why didn't you just tell her? Why didn't you just talk about it? Well, it's not that easy. I was brought up in a Christian home. I'm a minister's son. My dad is a minister, retired now. But as you can imagine, in the 80s, there's absolutely no chance I could have spoken about these things that were going on in my head and in my mind. So I struggled in silence, and didn't feel that I could talk to anyone. I was completely on my own. Even though I have got an amazing family around me. My mum and dad, have helped me immensely in my life. And God has really blessed me with the parents I've got. But I just couldn't speak to anyone. Couldn't speak to my wife. Couldn't speak to anyone around me, just because I was scared and fearful of what people would think of me, especially in the Christian world. I was scared, and it took a disaster, or what seemed like a disaster 3 years ago, to bring all of this stuff out of me and things out of my wife as well, and brought us to a table, and we were sort of presented with two paths, if you know what I mean. We could go down the road of divorce, or we could fight for our marriage, fight for our relationship, and fight for our family. And that's what we chose to do, thank God. And it has been the springboard for something so amazing. We now know everything about each other, which I think in itself is fairly rare in a relationship, where you know everything about each other. And we do. I've shared with my wife now about being bisexual. It's just the way I am. I can't explain it. It's just the way I am. She knew about the drugs. You can't really hide that. But it just kind of shocked us both into changing our lives. And it shocked me into looking at the way I was living. And that day I decided, the 5th of July 2021, I am not touching any more substances, and I want something better. You know, I want to start living, not just existing. So from that day, I have been free from addiction. Our lives have completely changed. I decided to get myself back in the gym and get myself as physically fit as I possibly could. And at this point, I didn't know I had HIV. That didn't come about until October, late October. But because we'd both been, this started us on this journey of how can I put it? We fell in love again. That's the best way I can put it. We fell in love all over again, and this healing journey started. And for 3 years, we hadn't even slept in the same bed. We hadn't had sex. We hadn't slept in the same bed. We just drifted apart, and we were just people living in the same house. We didn't have blazing rows or anything like that. We just drifted apart, and we're living together, you know, not really as a married couple. So how did I find out I had HIV? Well, that started in early October. I started to feel a bit sick and a bit ill, and as I've done and shared in other videos, I've shared what my HIV symptoms were. And eventually I got an infection that just wouldn't go away. Now, I didn't realise at the time, but it turned out to be a urinary tract infection. But it drove me to go to the clinic, or both of us to go to the clinic. And, you know, we'd both been with other people, so we thought it was a wise decision before we got back together in sort of that way to get tested. So I had some tests done. We both had tests done, full screens for everything. And my test came back as detecting HIV. So as you can imagine, that came as a massive shock. But the nurses said to me, "You're going to be okay. This is easily manageable now." And within 2 days, I was put on medication. And 3 weeks later, I got an undetectable diagnosis. So the medication is amazing. You know, within 3 weeks, my viral load at the time was 24,600, I believe. And within 3 weeks of being on meds, I was undetectable. And I've been undetectable ever since. And this past 3 years has just been an amazing journey. And we're still on that journey together. You know, lots of new things are happening, new opportunities. We're closer than we've ever been. We fell in love all over again. And it all came from 3 years ago this week, from us finding out that we were both being unfaithful. From that point on, I stopped doing drugs, stopped living the way I was living, and it's put us on this whole new path of something that I could never have imagined. You know, if someone had said to me 3 years ago I'd be where I am now, or even as a couple we would be where we are now as a couple, I would have told you were crazy, because I could see no way out of the way I was living. I just couldn't see any. I was consumed by addiction. I was tormented by things that had happened to me in the past. You know, even though I had this amazing family around me, I felt so alone, because I was dealing with, you know, being bisexual on my own, you know. And when you're in, how can I put this? When you're in that moment, going through these things, you can feel like you're the only one. Even though I know we're not, there's plenty of people out there that are gay, bisexual, straight, whatever you are, but I just felt alone, like I was the only one, because I had no one to talk to. I didn't feel I could share this with anyone, because of, you know, my past, the way I was brought up in a Christian home. But now, scooting forward 3 years, I've spoken in 2 churches now about my HIV diagnosis, also about sexuality, because I feel this is stuff that needs to be spoken about, certainly in churches and the wider world as well. Because, you know, it's so easy to judge people. We can look at someone and say, you know, for instance, cheating, you know, being unfaithful. Sometimes there's reasons behind that, you know, or being HIV positive. You know, people can judge someone that's got HIV, and I've seen it myself, and I've had it happen to me. People so judge so easily and so quickly without hearing that person's story and what's gone on in their lives that may have brought them to that point. Addiction as well. It's so easily to judge people that we see on the streets, that are drunk out of their mind or high as a kite on something, But if we actually sat down and spoke to these people and understood them, you get a better picture of why they are where they are. And that's certainly the case in my life and in my wife's life. There's a backstory that you don't know about, which, in many people's lives, that we don't know about. And like I've said, I was brought up in a Christian home, and if you go to like the teachings of Jesus, the Gospels, for instance, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's two things that Jesus said that a lot of Christians forget about. One is not to judge people, that we have no right to judge anyone. And another one is, he said, to treat others how you want to be treated. And there's so much in them two statements, that he said. We don't have a right to judge anyone. We don't. We don't know what's gone in that person's life. And to treat others how you want to be treated. And that's the way I try and live my life now. We're all guilty of judging people. I've done that many times, but I try not to now. And I try and treat people with dignity and respect, because that's how I want to be treated. So I'm sorry to waffle on. I just wanted to share that with you today, that 3 years this week marks a huge change in my life and my wife's life, and is why we're both where we are today, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I felt compelled to share my story, share what's gone on in my life over certainly the past 3 years, and why I started to speak openly about my HIV status. And the main reason for that is because I sat quietly for 2.5 years, didn't share my status with anyone apart from close family, but I've seen over the past 2 years how people who are living with HIV are being treated, and this huge amount of stigma that is around HIV, most of which is just false. There's so many myths out there about HIV that simply aren't true. This is 2024, it's not the 1980s anymore. HIV has moved on. It's an easily manageable condition. 1 pill a day, U equals U, which means undetectable equals untransmittable. That means if you are on medication like myself, you cannot transmit HIV to anyone. It is impossible. It cannot happen. There's been so much research done on this, so many tests, it can't happen. So I just wanted to share my story in the hope of educating people about HIV in 2024. And that HIV has moved on, but unfortunately the stigma is still stuck, decades behind the reality of today. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. It's a pretty special day for me, a pretty special week, and for my wife. It's what, it's like a honeymoon almost, because our lives haven't been the same since, and in a positive way, excuse the pun, but in a positive way, our lives are so much better now. And I just want to show and share with people that even in the midst of what seems like a disaster, something so much better can flourish from that. And that's what's happened in our lives. So I hope you have a fantastic day, guys. I hope you have a great week. If any comments, leave them in the comments. Please share the video. Please like it if you like it. And if you're on YouTube, hit that notification bell and it will alert you to any future videos I do. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.